Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fireside Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jordan Cline, and I got a fun show for you today. Have author Keven Paul coming to the show. He is the author of Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2, What's Lurking in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Before we get to our guest, I want to remind everybody we have the new Krampus design in our merch section. Go to firesideparanormal.com, click on merch. We have that Krampus design. It is only available until the end of the year, so you want to make sure you grab that. The pictures that people are sending in look really cool, so make sure you get it. This past weekend, we were at the Misfits Metaphysical and Oddity Show in the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville. We had a table set up with a microphone. We were inviting folks to come and share some stories, so every week we're going to try to share a story with everybody. Got to meet a lot of cool folks. Our guest tonight was actually one of the vendors there, so I hope you enjoy him. Our first listener story is going to come in from Deborah.
Hello, my name's Deborah, and I'm from local here at the show that we're at, and I had a little story I wanted to tell them about. It happened when I was younger, a teenager. I was probably like 17. I just started driving, and I went out the ridge to see one of my friends, and she lived in a big farmhouse, and they had like a detached garage, and the driveway was a little bit far from the house. And so I went in, and then when it was time for me to leave, as soon as I walked out the door, I heard this voice like inside my head. It wasn't like out anywhere, but it said, "There's a cat underneath your car. It's going to get caught in the fan belt," like very specific. And so I was like, well, that's weird. And I'm like, so I just keep walking towards the vehicle, and it happens again. It says the same thing. "There's a cat underneath your car. It's going to get caught in the fan belt." So I'm like, oh, wow. And so I get up to the car, and I kind of start to look under the car. But, I'm a teenager, and I'm like, this is crazy. So I get in the car, and I put the keys in, and I turn it over, and it goes, boo, 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 boo. And I was like, oh, no, I think I killed their cat. And so, like, I get out of the car, and there's fur coming out from underneath the car. And I was like, oh. So I walk back to the house, and I like knock on the door, and I'm like, I think I might have killed your cat. And like, they're like all distraught, So they go out on the porch, and the cat's sitting there, and it has a big strip of fur missing off of it, and it didn't even cut it. And I was like, oh my God, it was like the craziest thing that's probably ever happened to me.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing your story. And if anybody out there wants to send a story in, if you want to email it, we can read it on the air. Not everybody likes to have their voice out there. So send us an email at firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. We can also keep your names anonymous too, if you'd like that. Also want to remind you, we do have a Patreon set up, patreon.com/firesideparanormalpodcast. $2 for a name drop on the show. We also have a Discord server that we developed for it too. So just another fun way for us to connect and have fun with each other. We have an event coming up called Hidden Marietta Paranormal Exposition. In the ballroom of the haunted and historic Lafayette Hotel, we will gather together all those who delight in the supernatural. From hands-on activities to speakers teaching you the secrets of haunted objects and locations, they have a unique array of creepy creative merchandise and a lot of things to experience and learn. There will be tours of the Lafayette also available. Advance tickets are $12 per person. Tickets at the door are $15 per person. And this event is coming January 29th, 2022. And that is going to be an earlier show. It's going to be 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm going to have a table set up to record your stories. It's going to be a lot of fun. Do a little meet and greet. Can't wait to see you guys there. All right, I want to get to our guests. Come sit with me by the fire as we welcome Keven Paul. He is the author of Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2, What Lurks in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Keven, you with us?
Well, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the show with you.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated.
Now, I actually, Keven and I were both part of the Misfits Metaphysical and Oddities show this weekend at the West Virginia Penitentiary. And I got to meet Keven, saw his booth and his books, and, Sarah connected with him too, so I wanted to make sure we got him on the show. So how was the show for you?
It was a different kind of experience. I had been to the penitentiary before and attended events, but never a paranormal event of any kind. So I enjoyed it a lot. It was a good mix of vendors. met some really interesting people, and there was a few folks there that I had already knew, and of course I ran into you and your wife. So all in all, it was a pretty good evening for me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and if you've never been to the Pen before, you only got to see, the newer part of the building. You didn't get to go into the old Gothic castle,
No,
that is the penitentiary. You got to take an opportunity one time and check that out. It is amazing. It'll take you back.
Yeah, a lot of folks. I'm just east of you, and a lot of folks from this area go there. And I have, as I said, I've attended other events there, but I have yet to do the tour. I've been next door to the mound several times, but I've not yet done the tour of the penitentiary.
Okay, that's very cool. I hope to, so y'all can hear this too. I am planning on renting out the penitentiary this coming year and doing an event, maybe do a overnight ghost hunt. So if that interests you at all, make sure you send us out an email, firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. That way we can get a little bit of a head count to see what we would be expecting, and that way we know when the best time frame would be to get to that as well. Now, Keven, tell me about your books.
Well, there's two books about based on Greene County, Pennsylvania. The first two, it's going to turn into a series because I've always started the third one. The first was Haunted Hills and Hollows, What Lurks in Greene County, Pennsylvania, which I co-authored with the late Rosemary Ellen Guiley. It came out in May of 2018. The second book was just released this past October 23rd, I believe. It's Haunted Hills and Hollows 2, Still Lurking in Greene County, Pennsylvania. I had met Rosemary after hearing her on an internet streaming broadcast. It was a period of my life when I was experiencing some things I didn't quite understand, and I'm like a lot of folks, I'm a lifetime experiencer, and she said some things that kind of piqued my curiosity, and I sent her an email, and long story short, we knew each other about 12 years. She came to Greene County frequently, doing research on a couple of her books on the gin, and then we're having lunch one day, and she suggested that I write a book about Greene County, and as it turned out, I was a little reluctant to write one just under my name, so she wrote about 20% of the first book, and I did the other 80. And then it has apparitions, cryptids, some aliens, one chapter is called The Angry Spirits of the Land. It's kind of a nature spirit or a non-human entity. And then I followed up the second one. Two of the gentlemen in the first book that had close encounters with UFOs agreed to undergo hypnotic regression. So I got updates on their stories. Followed up on some work on the local historical society museum, which is in the first book. There's a lot of unusual activity there, and then I actually finished the second one with a personal experience. The publisher encouraged me to do that, so he sort of drugged me kicking and screaming until I finally sat down and did it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The first book has a lot of local history because we were trying to we wanted to see if we could tie hot spots of paranormal activity here in Greene County with locations where there'd been violent skirmishes with the Native Americans, and I think we did pretty well at that. There's not quite as much history in this. There's history in the second one, but it's not
as prevalent.
Not Native American history. It's Greene County history.
Now, let me ask you this: what do you think it is about Greene County that is such a hotbed for all this paranormal activity?
I'd have to say, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with the Chestnut Ridge.
I was getting ready to ask you.
Okay, yeah, well, we're kind of the foothills. and it's a lot of the same kind of activity, and I'm not sure if it's similar. It's not identical, but I think we discussed this at length. It has to do with the strata under the ground and magnetic fields. And then I had read a book called Healing Wounded History that kind of opened my eyes to how you can tie present-day paranormal activity into historical events that happen to people in the same location. And as I said in the second book, what happens to the land happens to the people and vice versa. So kind of an Appalachian spin on being connected to the ground, families and generations in the same place. If you follow what I'm saying.
Can you share some of the stories from in the book? Like, just looking through some of your chapters, we got like the lobster alien and other strange beings. We got massacres, blood-soaked ground, spectral residents, the ghosts, mystery people, black-eyed people.
Yeah, the lobster alien was a lot of the people that have told their stories in these books were people that I've known most of my life, so okay. I didn't have to really establish credibility. The lobster alien was the story of a young woman. I believe we've changed her name, referred to her as Sherry. Had a very vivid dream where this creature that sort of stood upright like a humanoid, but had lobster-like claws instead of hands, had reached into her bedroom window.
Oh, wow.
And was trying to drag her out like they were going to abduct her. And when she woke up, she thought it was a dream, except she was laying on the bedroom floor, and the arm that lobster alien in the dream had grasped was covered in bruises.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she and her husband still live it was her parents' place. They still live there. She had some very interesting stories of hearing screaming at night and seeing unusual lights in the sky. And there was one of her neighbors corroborated all that unsolicited. And then I just talked to another gentleman about 2 weeks ago that grew up in the same area, and this is 3 different generations, and he'd seen some of the same stuff. So that's how that story got included in the book.
Now, how many
bloody history? Pardon?
How many folks do you think, or how many folks have you talked to that had seen like the lobster clawed aliens?
The only person that had actually seen the lobster alien was Sherry.
Okay.
When she told her mother about it, her mother made a remark, something along the lines of, "Well, that's just the aliens. They're trying to keep track of you." But our mother's deceased now, so we weren't able to ask her whether, in hindsight, it doesn't appear to be a joke, but maybe it was at the time.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
But the lights in the sky, people are still seeing at present in that particular part of the county.
Now, how close is that to the ridge?
To Chestnut Ridge? You can be there from Waynesburg, about 40 minutes.
Okay. Because I know, we've discussed Chestnut Ridge on the show before, and, that's a hot spot for not only, UFO, but like Bigfoot and things like that.
Yeah, I talk with Stan Gordon fairly often. We've got some Bigfoot activity here, but it doesn't seem to be nearly as much as what they have in Chestnut Ridge. What I've kind of stumbled into here is like non-human, not really, I'm not sure if you could call them cryptids, but because they don't appear to be animals, but just unusual non-human entities that will take humanoid shape.
So are we talking more like shadow people, or are we talking...
Yeah, a lot of shadow people. There's been some reports just in the last few months of things that, for lack of a better word, we're describing as gargoyles, because they appear to be hunched over and have grotesquely shaped heads. I've talked to some other researchers that are getting reports of these. It's not Slender Man, but kind of like an elongated shadow person type entity. I've gotten some reports on that. We got a fair amount of Dogman activity.
So explain Dogman. That's a new one for me.
Well, Dogman, I'm not sure where exactly to classify Dogman. Some people want to put him in with werewolves, but they're not really. In conversations with Stan, apparently there's a classification. I gravitate more towards non-human entities than cryptid.
Okay.
So apparently there's a class of Bigfoot that can, at first glance, can look dog-like. Are you familiar with the like a white thing in West Virginia?
Uh-huh.
Get some reports of that. Or at least I think it's the same entity. It sounds like it. And I had a couple interesting reports of a goat man, which I just put in the sort of the file to wait and see what happens. And I work with a psychic in Armstrong County named Lindsay Miller, and we were chatting on social media one night when I was researching the second book, and I had her looking at a location, and she described a goat man, which kind of floored me at the time because it was in the same general area where I'd had a report of one probably 3 or 4 years previously.
Now explain goat man for our listeners. And here's why I'm asking you to explain. We have a lot of listeners out there that are new to the paranormal, and we get emails a lot.
Okay.
We get questions. We actually did a raffle last week. We did a giveaway, and on our Facebook group, I put, tell me your favorite cryptid. I couldn't tell you how many messages I got that said, "What's a cryptid?" Okay, so
yeah.
when we
I apologize for that.
No. It's just I want to take the approach. For everybody. That way, instead of like slang stuff, like if we could, what is goat man? That way they're not left in the dark.
Well, goat man is, as this particular one was described to me. It's in the second book. Second book in the chapter that's called Guggenheim and the Children's Home. If you would take like from the waist down of a man, or actually basically from the shoulders down of a man, but like with the head of a goat, was sort of how it's described. The Romans, like Pan in mythology was a goat man. This one was described as being upright on 2 feet, but they can be down on 4.
So we're not talking like Greek mythology kind of cross species stuff.
That's the closest description that people might be familiar with. Yes.
Okay. What is that?
Like
is
a
that
satyr?
A satyr?
Pardon?
Like a satyr? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, just turn to the chapter there. Guggenheim and the Children's Home. All right, so tell me the story here.
Well, Guggenheim, I talked to a couple gentlemen that had been, I should back up a little bit. The Children's Home served as that for a number of years in Greene County, and then it became a minimum security correctional facility.
Oh.
At one time it was all male, one time it was all female, and for a short time it was co-ed. And then the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections decided it was no longer economically viable to operate, so they sold it to a private entity that tried to run it as a school for a correctional facility, but more like a school campus, privately run school campus. And there was a lot of paranormal activity in the administration building. And it went on year after year after year, and the local staff finally named the perpetrator, or perpetrators anyway. I'm not sure where they came up with the name, but they all called him, or it, Guggenheim. Be crank phone calls. Since the book came out, I've had a retired security guard contacted me and said objects would move across the floor and the lights would swing back and forth. It was basically real similar to poltergeist activity.
Ooh.
A lot of footsteps, but nobody present. Disembodied voices, that sort of thing. And the thing that kind of made it intriguing to me when I was researching Guggenheim, and the consensus of opinion was he hung around on the top floors of the administration building. And when I was discussing this with Lindsay, the psychic, she reported that this goat man liked to be up high where he could watch everybody. So I'm kind of wondering if they're all talking about the same thing, but of course, there's no conclusive proof yet.
Now, when you go, I feel like you take more of a journalistic approach, right? To all this.
I guess this just sort of evolved on its own.
Now, did you do investigations as well? Were you in there with like a flashlight and a recorder?
I'm not a big fan of technology when it comes to paranormal investigations. When Rosemary and I worked that chapter in the first book called Angry Spirits of the Land, we started off with a lot of technology, and as the years went by, we abandoned more and more of it, and at the end, we were working with, we're doing intuitive work and a recorder and cameras, and that was about it. So I very rarely take a recorder. I like to take other witnesses if I can.
Uh-huh.
But during COVID, I really started working with psychics a lot, Lindsay Miller in particular. And the chapter in the book, the second book called Local Legends, that was sort of the test case, the Moordock house. Everyone was, when I was in high school, everybody assumed it was haunted, and there was all these different stories. So I initially set out to debunk it, but the more we looked into it, I think we solved the mystery. So I guess in a long roundabout answer to your question, maybe I do take a journalistic approach, because I try to get 2 or 3 corroborating reports of activity, and then then I could work backwards and try to find some kind of an event that might have triggered it.
Now you're big into folklore as well, right?
Yes.
So do you try to like hunt down the origins for the lore?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. So let's talk about Guggenheim, right? Do you kind of look in to see if there was like a tall, I don't know, grotesque looking man that used to work at that hospital or the boys' home?
No, I didn't uncover it. I accepted the reports of the guys that had worked security there, based on their professional training, and one of them was ex-military, and he grew up in a house that was fairly active. So I will give someone that's got a police background or professional training. It's easier to accept what they're saying because they're trained observers.
Uh-huh.
Now, as far as the folklore, there's a couple examples in the second book about the museum. One would be there's what I'm fairly convinced is a Native American guardian spirit there that travels with some artifacts that have been there. And then there's some other non-human entities that we actually used folklore to identify them. I was pretty sure what I'd run into because it was very similar to what was at that farm in the first book, but I wasn't sure. So I talked to 3 different psychics on that particular case, Lindsay Miller, a psychic named Chris Marie, and Tanya Medea. And Lindsay and Chris gave me some information that I'm pretty confident we identified it. I'm pretty sure it's gin.
Okay. Two questions on that. One, when you get the psychic help, are they all three at the same time? Do you take them to the location separately and try to like see if they see the same things?
Okay,
Or do they take
Lindsay's
it all
in
together?
Armstrong County, which is sort of the central part of the state.
Okay.
Tanya's in Twinsburg, Ohio, or I'm sorry, Levittown, Ohio, and Chris Marie is, pardon me?
No, go ahead.
And Chris Marie is, she's in Westmoreland County, PA, and what I'll do is I'll send them Google Earth images and not tell them anything about it and say, what did you see?
Okay.
And then...
So they're
more
going
often
off
than
the
not,
impressions
their
of what you're
answers line up.
seeing, and not necessarily like walking the location themselves. They're doing more of their reading from their home.
Tanya and Lindsay both have been to the museum here, but it was in Lindsay's case, it was actually after the book was done. But I about 90% of the time, I just say I'm going to send you some pictures and just send them blind, and I try to send them without landmarks or anything, so you can't eliminate as much as possible the possibility that they would recognize something.
Okay, so they can't necessarily like Google search kind of the area to try to catch.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah,
neat.
like the Moordock house. I sent images of it to the Medias, and they in turn. So I sent it to them blind. I just said I need impressions on this, and they in turn sent it on to some other people. I don't even know who they were, and the information that came back from them kind of corroborated the theory I was working on. So it was very helpful.
So the second question would be the jinn. Tell us about the jinn.
Well, the jinn, according to the lore, were created before humans, and a lot of people think they're Middle Eastern and limited to the Middle East, but they're not. They're the easiest way to describe them in Western terms would be interdimensional beings. The Muslim lore describes them as being made of smokeless fire. So Rosemary did a lot of work on them, and she, in our conversations, we would refer to them as like plasma energy. They have a social structure. They have families. They reproduce sexually. They're mortal, although they live a lot longer than we do. So we're existing in the same space with them, although we can't see them. And most of them, some of them are ambivalent towards humans. Some of them, a few of them are slightly affectionate, and some, frankly, don't care for us. So
I've heard.
If you're familiar with elementals and fairy lore and leprechauns and that, there's real similar. You kind of have to tread lightly when you're around them. They'll communicate with you, but when they say, go away, you need to leave.
I've heard they're kind of mean. Is that?
They can be incredible. They can be vicious.
And then for those listening, Jen is kind of. It's where we get the word genie, right?
Correct.
Okay, so they're kind of like genies without the cuffs and the lamp that are out.
Yeah, genies are like, Tinkerbell now's cute and voluptuous, and that's really not the way fairies operate. It's sort of westernized, romanticized version. I'm confident that there's gin at the Historical Society. The details are in the second book, but Lindsay and I were looking into it, and we had a rather stern warning to leave them alone, so we stopped.
Really? Now, who was the warning from?
Pardon me?
The warning was from them?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I douse.
Okay.
And that's generally how I reach out to the other world. Lindsay's much more, I don't know. She doesn't require dowsing rods, anything like that. She just, or Tanya, some of these other psychics are more advanced in my dowsing techniques, but I'm comfortable with dowsing, so I douse.
So explain dowsing for us.
Well, are you familiar with dowsing rods?
I am.
Well, so you have. I use metal dowsing rods, and you invoke your protection, and then you just ask. You identify who you're speaking with, and then you ask a series of yes or no questions.
And you have like a metal kind of pole in each hand, right?
Right.
And
in
then
my
if they
case,
cross, is that how it works?
when the rods cross over one another, it's yes, and when they spread apart, it's no. You can do the same kind of thing with the pendulum. I prefer dowsing rods.
And for those of you out there listening, he's not like grabbing them tight and like moving them with his wrist. Like you kind of have them loose, right? Yeah. That's how.
Yeah, they're metal. You hold the metal sleeve, and the rod itself pivots in the sleeve. And a lot of times I'll ask the same question in several different sessions to make sure I'm getting the right answers, to eliminate the fact that there's always a chance that you're not holding your hand as still as you think you are.
There's always user error to everything.
Correct.
Now that's originally way back when how folks found water, right? Wells.
You can find water, you can find oil, you can find pipelines, lost objects, but it's part of the Appalachian, and I don't like using this term, the folk magic, because when you say magic, people think pulling rabbits out of hats, but it's not. That's not really what it is. I prescribe to. It's kind of a blend of Protestant Christianity, but I can also accept folklore, including dowsing, as long as there's no expectations that anything is superior to the Holy Trinity.
Okay. Now with your faith going into that, how are you seeing, like, because you do a lot of stuff with spirits and ghosts and things like that, and these entities, do you think your faith is bringing them out to talk to you? Do you think that, they're trying to scare you away?
Well, everybody's wired different. Some people have a natural inclination to experiencing the paranormal.
Agreed.
And I would put myself in that category. I don't know how many other researchers feel this way. I think the vast majority of what's being passed off as human hauntings really isn't. It's the spirit world. In traditional Appalachian spiritual beliefs, we're surrounded by the spirit world constantly, and there's constantly a battle between good and evil. And yes, there are entities that are out to get you, but I don't want to sound like overconfident or smug or anything, but you kind of learn to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you've said you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, you learn it the hard way, and I'm fairly comfortable with it, but I fall back on my when I was a kid, my mom went back to work when I was 5, so this would have been 1961. So I went up the road to my grandparents' house, and that was daycare. And my grandmother, we started the day off with like old time gospel music. She bought a record player and played gospel music when I first got there. And then the rest of the day was whatever she and my grandfather got into with, farm-related stuff. But I got taught a lot of folklore. So my perspective, and I realize this isn't everybody's perspective, but, I can accept, like at Wheeling, Moundsville there was a couple ladies, young ladies next to me that were witches. I can accept what they say and what they believe from a folklore standpoint. It's legitimate, but it's not the core of my belief system. If I'm answering your question, the core of my belief system is Christianity, but it's an old school Appalachian version. There's a paper online. I'm sorry, I forget the author. It's called Protestant Christianity, or Appalachian Folklore and Protestant Christianity. It was written by a guy at West Virginia State University. That's pretty much where I'm at spiritually. Very
cool. Another question.
I'll tell you what. If you got the second book, It's in the bibliography in the back.
Let me flip.
So
see
I
if you can hear
I
that
can
on the-
incorporate the learning to read the signs and all that kind of stuff because in my mind it doesn't interfere with Christianity, and that's what I use to interpret the paranormal. Because just as in the Bible, all these things communicate via metaphors. And I think a lot of people misread them because they're relying on their electronics. And they're assuming that their electronics go dead because the entities need the power. And I don't think that's the case. I think the electronics go dead because the electromagnetic fields are giving off are annoying to the spirits, because you can go to these sites and have 15 people with gadgets that have AA batteries in them, and they'll all go dead. But yet, there'll be 15 cars out in the parking lot that have far more energy stored in batteries that rarely get touched.
That's a great point, and you don't hear that from many investigators.
It was working with Rosemary that kind of got me started on this, because we would go out, as I said, it got to the point where we'd literally go sit in the field and just wait. And we started kicking the idea around that we're relying on technology too much. And part of it is, I grew up running farm machinery and listening to loud music. I'm not an EVP guy because I can't hear them. and I wouldn't be able to hear them without somebody putting on the screen what it says. Because in my mind, it's like
giving a
you're
suggestion.
steering the witness in a witness stand in a trial. You lead them.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
And I don't want to say I don't rely on technology at all, because I use game cameras. But I've gotten some really interesting footage on game cameras after I asked the entities where to set the camera up and asked them if they would appear.
How about that?
And I don't have trouble with the batteries going dead or any of that kind of stuff.
Now, what kind of stuff are you getting on your trail cameras?
In the second book, there's a photograph of a row of lights. I caught 2 separate videos and several stills. The camera manufacturer and 2 other professionals, all 3 told me that it wasn't a camera malfunction, that whatever it was in the air between the camera and the building that the camera was focused on. I've tried several times to duplicate it. I've never been able to. There's a part in a chapter in the book where I asked where to set the camera up, and again, this was at both these instances at the Greene County Historical Society Museum. Second floor of the West Wing, asked where to set the camera up. I caught one. I got stills of an exit light that's illuminated in a circuit that was dead at the time. It's wired in with all the ceiling lights. You can see the executive director and one of his coworkers go down the hall. They shut everything off. They lock the building. A few minutes later, the exit light illuminates, and to our knowledge, that's physically impossible because there's no juice in that particular circuit because it was dead at the switch. And not only that, the camera should have photographed it in black and white and photographed it in color. And the following morning,
how about that?
I got I got a skinny, very slender shadow inside a bookcase that appears to disappear through the floor. And there's a paranormal group that caught this a very similar entity in black and white in a different part of the building. And again, there's a tendency to want to think it's human, and I disagree. For some reason, shadow people are considered shadow people, but some of these folks, if you catch something that looks humanoid in motion on a camera, then they want to say it's human, and I just disagree.
So you don't think shadow people are or were ever human?
In my opinion, shadow people are, if they aren't exactly, they're very closely related to jinn.
Okay. Now, why do you think that?
Personal experience.
Have you had one like have you had like interactions with shadow people?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll have to. I'm not going to be evasive, but sometimes I have to watch my answers. Because,
Okay. No, you're fine.
Okay.
What I think he's saying is, don't give away my third book.
No, what I'm saying is I don't want to talk about stuff I've been told not to talk about.
Okay. You're good. Can you talk about black-eyed people?
I can. Black-eyed people or black-eyed kids are essentially that. They look like regular people, but they will appear at people's doors or walk up to them in the parking lot in the mall, and they'll say things like, a lot of times it's kids, and they'll say, can you give me a ride home, or can I come in and use your bathroom? And the reports are, when you make eye contact with them, their eyes are just completely black. And the first book, I don't remember what pseudonym we gave the person, but he was at work, and he'd seen these, it was a boy and a girl, if I remember the story correctly, were going like from store to store, but they wouldn't enter. I mean, they got to where he was working, they wanted to use the restroom, and when he realized he was talking to a black-eyed kid, he refused him entry. It's kind of like the old vampire lore where they can't come in unless you allow them.
So they try to get permission to come in. Now, with them, are they trying to hurt you? Are they trying to kill you? Are they trying to like feast on you like a vampire?
Well, I don't think anybody really knows. There are some reports where people have had encounters with them, and then they have like a streak of bad luck. Car wrecks, they get ill, that sort of thing.
Now that is happening too in Greene County.
Yes.
Are there a lot of, sightings of this?
I've heard of a couple that I was comfortable enough to put in the book. Mostly what I get through word of mouth or direct contact is cryptids, a lot of UFOs, a lot of apparitions, and unusual activity in houses, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, in your first book, you have a chapter called Close Encounters of the Celtic Kind.
That's the second one.
Oh, that's the second book.
Yeah.
All right, so in your second book, you have a chapter called Close Encounters of the Celtic Kind. What? Tell me about that.
Well, here's where your folklore and your Christianity blend. The publisher wanted an extra chapter and was encouraging me to put in a personal experience. And I can't say where it is. It's a public access, but I'm not sure this particular entity wants people poking around. Actually, it's
okay.
I probably shouldn't use the word entity. But long story short, I had a series of dreams that stretched back over a couple of years that I recorded in a journal, and it was a lot of symbolism and sacred geometry and natural settings that were real familiar to me based on my professional career, which the last 20 years has been soil and water conservation on, in agricultural settings. And I still work in that capacity 3 days a week. A lot of sacred geometry and numbers that made no sense, and specific animals, crows, dogs, and horses, and sometimes cattle. So I was writing this all down. And then the dream switched, and I started encountering what researcher John Keel would have called ultra-terrestrial. So it was these, in the dreams I knew they were, I started off, I thought they were aliens, but they were actually interdimensional people. They were human, nearly always female. They looked like hippies from the Vietnam War era. So I was at work in my professional capacity one day, and I went to this particular property to visit the particular person, And this person said, "Let me introduce you to someone that's here to help me." And this woman steps out, and it was one of these, it was identical to one of these ultra-terrestrials in a dream. Which,
a dream that you had?
Yeah, which like floored me. I was trying to put my poker face on, but I didn't know whether to say, have we met someplace or get in the vehicle and run. So the dreams changed from symbolism till there was humans that also mixed in symbolism, and a lot of times there was these hippie-looking women, and eventually it changed to a single auburn-haired woman, slender, dressed like from antiquity. And there was a series of things, and some of them at the time were kind of disturbing because in the dreams she was in the house, and as I said, my wife works night shift. So in one dream, I was puttering around the house here at night, and I ran into this woman. Had no idea who she was. Long story short, I was at a spot northwest of Waynesburg. Had some unusual experiences, and this woman stepped out of the woods, and it was this woman from the dream. It was her tea, the dark hair, she's slender, she had a big dog with her. So this is something else I've been working with Lindsay Miller on, and it turns out that I had encountered what it seems to be the Irish Iron Age deity, the Morrigan.
Wow.
And I had a lot of trouble with that at first because, like I said, I had a dream journal went back 2 years, and according to the folklore, everything fit. But I'm thinking, why would an Iron Age deity appear to me, first of all? And second of all, I'm thinking, well, I'm Christian. I can't. I reached out to I got some acquaintances that are witches and pagans, and they're versed in this stuff, and they said, it was like they're saying, wow, she just doesn't show up. She chooses who she shows up. And they were all talking about entering into a covenant with her, and I said, well, I can't enter into a covenant with her because I'm Christian. I can't have other gods before God. So I sat here one night with my dowsing rods, and I said, look, where I'm at, this is a paraphrase, where I'm at spiritually, I can't serve you, but I can accept you, and I can accept your lore if you'll show me what it is you want me to see. And then it just opened up, and the rest of it's in the book. I won't spoil it, but and I saw her a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
I was I really can't say where. But I was at a place, and I thought, I had got this message, you need to go here before you go to lunch. So I went to this place, and I sat down, and I said, okay, who's here and what you want? And next thing I know, the Morgan was sitting on the bench beside me and had a message for me. And it pertains to the third book, and I won't tell you about
Okay,
that.
you don't know. You don't need to give spoilers. Now, let me ask you this. From seeing her the first time to seeing her just here recently, how much time you think had passed?
Recently was, I'd have to look at my calendar, it was November of this year, and I saw her the previous October. When I saw her in the form that she appeared in the, when she stepped out with the dog, that was October of 2020. But the dreams started probably 2018, 2019. But again, I'm trying. Pardon me?
I didn't say nothing.
I'm trying to navigate this and make sense of it, and stay true to your spiritual beliefs. And I think I've got it worked out. She seems to be okay with it, and I haven't. I go into this in the book. There's a what I refer to as a voice that which is short for the voice of God, communicates with me. It's never wrong. So to my knowledge, I'm on good standing with everybody. If that changes, I'll let you know.
If that changes, you might not be able to let me know.
It doesn't very often work that way. The stuff you hear about free will and free choice is very pertinent. It's up to you whether or not you do this stuff.
So let me ask you this: how do folks get up with you? How do they get your books? Tell us how to contact you if by chance somebody out there, is in Greene County, they want to get a hold of you, tell them or want to tell you their story. How do they find you?
Easiest way, I'm on Facebook, Keven Paul. That's KevinPaul. Like I said, I'm low tech, so I'm just starting to think about maybe Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My email address is hauntedgc, as in haunted Greene County, but it's hauntedgc@yahoo.com. My snail mail address is Post Office Box 905, Waynesburg, PA 15370. Books can be purchased on Amazon, both of them. The first book is in paperback, Kindle, and audio.
Nice.
The second is in paperback and Kindle. We haven't made a decision on audio yet. If any of your listeners are going to the Hidden Marietta Expo, January 29th, I'll be there. I think that's about it. I am speaking. Anybody that's in like the Wheeling area, I'll be at the Bowlby Public Library in Waynesburg on the night of January 19th. I think that's about it for now. I'll also be. There's a conference here in March here in Waynesburg, PA, called the Southwestern Pennsylvania Haunted Con. I'll be there. Again, you can find that on Facebook.
Very cool. And we will be at the event in Marietta as well, so we will see you again.
Oh, will you?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we are looking forward to that. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We are out of time, but we'll definitely catch up again, and I can't wait for that third book.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. You have a great day, sir.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
And with that, the fire is out. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Remember to check us out on all the socials, Facebook, Fireside Paranormal Hub, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. We're having fun everywhere. Make sure you go to firesideparanormal.com. You can see our merch page. Remember, we got that Krampus shirt that is only available to the end of the year, so make sure you grab it. And until next week, everybody, don't be afraid, only believe.